In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, God is one. Amen. Good morning, Anthony. It looks to be just you and I at the moment, which I guess says something about us on this absolutely magnificent, beautiful, boiling hot day here in Lincolnshire, and I hear it's much the same also in Wales. Good morning, Aaron, to three of us now. So there we go. Absolutely scorching day. You might hear some squeak background at some points. There's a turkey chick here with me today called Crimbo, and he likes to follow me around everywhere, so he walks around with me, so I have to be very careful not to tread on him. He's only absolutely minute. I go and get him a bit later and show him to you. Anyway, the second thing that's a problem is that the charger on this computer has broken, so it might just suddenly disappear. I hope not, but we'll see what happens. So I'll have to get somebody to order a new one for us. So without any further ado, we'll crack on. Good morning, Tatiana and Dina as well. I'll continue to pray for your son, and I hope that he's enjoying, I hope we're all enjoying this magnificent weather we're having at the moment. Of course, people moaning like merry hell about it now that it's actually sunny, and saying, oh, so much nicer when it's cooler. I so much prefer grey days. Anyway, there we go. So Romans chapter 1, verses 24 to 32. Let's see what we can make of this. It's one of those bits of the scriptures that it's all blood and guts. Here we go. Good morning, Phoebe. So verse 24 to 32. Therefore, God also gave them up to uncleanness and the lusts of their hearts, to dishonor their bodies among themselves, who exchanged the truth of God for a lie, and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. For this reason, God gave them up to vile passions, for even though women exchanged the natural use of what is against nature, exchanged the natural use for what is against nature, likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the women, burned in their lust for one another, men with men, committing what is shameful, and receiving in themselves the penalty of their error, which was due. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a debased mind, to do those things which are not fitting, being filled with all unrighteousness, sexual immorality, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, evil-mindedness. They are whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, violent, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, undiscerning, untrustworthy, unloving, unforgiving, unmerciful, who, knowing the righteous judgment of God, that those who practice such things are deserving of death, not only do the same, but also approve of those who practice them. Wow. So there we go. St. Paul at his best as far as making lists of things are concerned. Good morning, Stella and Andrew and Anton from your sunny patio. Lucky you. I remember somebody in North London used to call it a patio. And good morning, Gary, as well. I'm going to have to crack on today because I don't know how long the battery in this computer is going to last, because the recharging doings has broken. I don't know how that's happened, but anyway, it has. And I've just noticed that the milk in my tea has curdled. How vexing. Good morning, Ian. Summer has definitely arrived. Yes, it might even last till tomorrow. Now, so 24 to 27, we'll start off with that. Let's have some background. And the background really comes in verse 23. And change the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like corruptible man, and birds and four-footed animals and creeping things. Therefore, God gave them up to uncleanness, and so on. So, having exchanged the worship of the majestic God for the worship of creatures, St. Paul is saying, people began to worship only themselves and pleasure. They gave themselves up entirely to pleasure, only themselves. And they did that with complete abandon. Then the Lord says, verse 26, God gave them up to vile passions. Now that word gave them up, paradokin, is interesting because that is exactly the same word as was used when Judas in John hands over or gives up the Lord to be betrayed. It says when he's betrayed, it's the same word, paradokin, gave them up, betrayed, paradokin. So it means betrayed, handed over, yielded up. God yields them up, betrays them, allows themselves really to betray themselves into vile passions. God lets them do whatever they want. Having turned away from Him, having not wanted to have anything to do with God, they then give themselves up, or rather God allows them to be given up to do whatever they wish, whatever that might be. And then all the rest of the verses, from then onwards, to the bottom end of that chapter, describe the life of somebody or other who's given themselves up. They're given up to the desires of their hearts, it says. Okay, their vile passions, the desires of their hearts. That's exactly what it means there. That's what the Greek actually says. Gave them up to the desires of their hearts. Now, the desire of the hearts of Christians is, of course, communion with God, where com means with, and union, unus, means oneness. So to have oneness with God, to be one with God, which is the highest possible communion with anything, to have communion with the Creator. It's described elsewhere like a faithful marriage between the Lord Jesus and the church. That's really some of the background there. What is our passion? Our passion must be communion with God. That above and beyond and instead of everything else, making that our one and only aim. Elsewhere, St. Paul says, make love your aim. But here, communion with God, which is the same thing, to join in that love with God, same thing. Okay? Now, St. Paul has not yet been to Rome, but he knows all about Roman and Greek culture. And he sees that this pure union with God that he is coming to offer to them is replaced, unnaturally replaced, shall we say, unnaturally already replaced with all kinds of, let's call it rumpty-tumpty, okay? So this pure union with God is replaced with all kinds of rumpty-tumpty that causes Paul, it's interesting the way that he talks about it. He's obviously quite ashamed and embarrassed to talk to Tertius about it and have Tertius write this down. In place of burning with lust for God, they burn with lust for anyone who will satisfy that lust. Okay? Anybody at all. It's interesting the way St. John Chrysostom spends probably more time on this little bit here than any other part of Romans, going into it in quite a lot of depth. Is clearly much disturbed by what he is reading, and it is clearly something that is still part of the life of Constantinople at that time, where people turn away from God and they then burn with lust for absolutely everything and anything else. Okay, that will satisfy that lust, and it means sort of craven lust, lusting after things that are not to do with God. In this particular case here, sensual pleasure taking the place of communion with God. Now, what he's talking about are people completely, what's the word I'm looking for? Abandoned to sex. They'd have orgies. They would go with anybody who walked past the front door. Men with women, men with men, men with boys, and pederasty was a big thing. There were temples given over to sexual lusts. Later on, St. Nicholas would go to various temples and destroy them and rescue the girls who were given over as temple prostitutes and bring them back to Myra in Lycia so that they would be freed from that. The same happened with boys as well. So this sort of sexual orgiizing was something that St. Paul was, and so he should be, utterly appalled by. Now that's really important. And I can say that really some things don't really change, do they? We don't tend to have huge public orgies, but one of the things that I'm interested by the idea of, is the way that such an enormous part of the internet is given over to pornography. Now, an enormous part of the internet would not be given over to pornography if that pornography was not being watched, if people were not paying to look at it, if people were not sort of orgiizing on countless images, apparently, of these things. Remember when I worked in the prison, there was a man there who had been put in prison for having literally hundreds of thousands of images of naked children who were being abused on his hard drive, which he was then sharing with others and had made millions of pounds. He had whole rooms in his big house completely devoted to hard drives with the most indecent pornography on it. And this is, that's an extreme case, but everything from everywhere. You just need to walk into town here to see extremely, what would have been, certainly in my youth, and I know that's half a century away, in my youth would have been something that would have scandalized people and had people shocked to their core that anybody would produce such images and put them on the outside of shops. But there we are. So things don't change. The fathers, all the way through, the fathers say much the same as St. Paul is saying about their own times. Now, why is this important? It's important because we are created in the image and likeness of God. And therefore, as it says elsewhere, whatever you do with your body, any bodily sins, deface the image of God himself. If you unite yourself to a prostitute, how can you then say you're going to unite yourself in communion with God? If you unite yourself with pornography, how can you equally unite yourself with God? If you burn with lust after all sorts of images or real people, or behave in a way that is entirely promiscuous, that was the word I was looking for earlier on, entirely promiscuous, jumping into bed with anybody who walks past the front door, then how is it that how could you possibly, as it were, jump into bed with God, who is our creator and also our true spouse? It is obviously impossible. You cannot do it in that way. And this is what St. Paul is writing about. He's saying, it's obvious how to behave. The creator of heaven and earth, you need to be united to him. And these people are giving themselves up to vile passions. Anything that walks past, for a truly horrific idea of some of the things that might walk past, you might like to read what St. John Chrysostom says about this particular passage. Some of the things that St. John Chrysostom says there, I've been a priest long enough now to know that people still do nowadays. I remember the first time it shook me to the core, but after a while you say to yourself, oh, that again, how amazing that somebody should do this. And this committing themselves to that which is shameful and receiving in themselves the penalty of their error which was due. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but it is to do with having the image of God destroyed within you. Okay? You affix yourself to something that is not God, particularly in your own body, using your own body, which is an image of God, a temple of the Holy Spirit, with something that's not God, and the image of God within you is being destroyed from inside. And then 28 to 32, I'm deliberately running along because I don't know how long the computer is going to last today, because the connection to the plug is not working. It's actually the plug itself that's broken. I can see wires in it, so I'm hoping the whole thing doesn't burst into flames. And then he carries on. And as Dino says, this is something to wake up to, really. Tony is enjoying the Mediterranean island of Ireland. Well, that can't be very usual. So he carries on. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a debased mind to do those things which are not fitting. Now that's an interesting little verse there. They did not see fit, it starts off. They did not see fit. And here we've got a Greek word, which is edokimason. They did not see, edokimason. And it means to have God in their knowledge. Okay, it's not the same word as you might expect, which is ginoskin, to know, which is often has a sexual overtone. And I think Paul is deliberately changing this word, to have God in their knowledge, to retain God in their knowledge, have God in their own knowledge. Okay, and he then carries on. God gave them in their knowledge, and to see fit, and dokimason, to have God in their knowledge. And the word he uses there, it is in epigenosti. So it's a higher level than ginosko. Epigenosko, epipousios. So it's a higher level of knowledge, to know God in a higher level of knowledge. Recognition, sort of full acknowledgement, gave them up instead, and here we get that doki part repeated again, to see fit as unfit, to a debased mind, to do those things which are not fitting. And here we've got adokimon, mind, unfit mind. So he's using a whole series of word plays in order to bash this point through. Okay? They did not see fit, so he gave them up to an unfit mind. They didn't see fit to have what? To have God. So he allows them to have this unfit way of behaving as well, which we'll come on to in a moment. Why is this? Because they didn't have that higher understanding of God, a higher understanding than just playing around with your body with other people. Okay, so it gave them up in that sort of way. It's an unfit mind. And what is this unfit mind like? We've already known some of it, but he then carries on, filled with all unrighteousness. Remember, all of these things count. It's a very good place to go if you're wanting to think for something for confession. Unrighteousness, sexual immorality, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, evil-mindedness. They are whisperers, that means they're gossips, backbiters, haters of God, violent, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents. And then you've got this wonderful thing that Paul does. He starts every word with the word a, which means not. So undiscerning, the un part translates a bit a, undiscerning, untrustworthy, unloving, unforgiving, unmerciful, who, knowing the righteous judgment of God, that those who practice such things are deserving of death, not only do the same, but also approve of those who practice them. And again, like we said on Friday, The judgment of God, the wrath of God, is where you yourself choose to hide yourself from God. So in choosing to hide themselves from God and instead worshipping base things, even slithering things that go on the floor, like snakes and other stuff like that, instead of doing that, they begin, instead of worshipping God, they also then make themselves base, like the four-footed animals, like idols of human beings, and like things that slither on the ground. And then their behavior, he says, becomes rather similar. Okay? And also, those people who approve of their behavior, even though they don't do it, actually are as bad as those other ones. Okay, so you've got all of that taken into account. You behave like that, or you approve of their behavior. You approve of their sexual immorality, of their murder, strife, deceit, evil-mindedness, and so on. Then you are as bad as they are. Quite a strong teaching in all of that. And I have to say, teaching that people don't like to hear. People are not keen at all to consider themselves in any way in that manner, and like to make excuses for themselves so that they can do whatever they want to do. Let's just go back to the beginning. What was really important about this? It was this. What should you be lusting after? I'm using that word. What should be the desire of your heart? The desire of the Christian heart is complete communion with God. Complete communion with God. And therefore, complete communion with anything else, especially when it destroys the image of God, destroys that communion with God. And Paul is saying, even these people, just naturally, they should know that you do not behave in this manner. All of these things, these many, I didn't count them up, be interesting to count them up, all these many ways that people are sinning, all of that destroys that ability to be in complete union, communion with God. Okay, so I think we can finish there. I'll have a look to see if there's any juice in my computer. Not much. I've got a couple of 3 minutes to go. I'll go and get little Crimbo, a turkey chick, and show you how pretty he is. He won't remain pretty forever, and he's not going to be eaten at Christmas. Oh no. Well, that's a pretty little thing. Eh? What do you think, Crimbo? Huh? It's rather funny because wherever I go, he runs around after me. He thinks that I'm his mother. And like something that's got a mother, he quite likes saying that, doesn't he? Neck tickled. So I'm looking at me now. He's expecting me to give him something to eat. He likes to take it out of my hands. Well, this is a hello, Margaret. He's very, very vocal. He never stops talking, in fact. And I rather like turkeys. And this one is a black Norfolk turkey, which will grow out to be extremely attractive, beautiful thing, with a great big tail. It depends on whether, of course, it's a male or a female, but the person who got him from said that he was sure that this was a male, but I don't really mind if it survives. And turkeys have really one desire in life, and that is to commit suicide, either by starving themselves to death or dying of something or other. They like doing that the entire time. Anyway, there we go. So there's little Crimbo for you. He's normally when he's being held in my hand like this, he likes to go off to sleep. You can see that he's doing that almost automatically. Eh? Why are you closing that eye and keeping that eye open? Open that eye and have a look that way. Okay, I'm going to go and do the opposite now. Right, okay, I'll try and keep him safe from the fox indeed. Good morning, Nathaniel, your prayers from St. Augustine, Florida. Gosh, I think it's very hot there. In fact, haven't you got fires or something terrible in that part of the world? Okay, your prayers, everybody. Continue, please, to pray for Father Samuel, that he gets better quickly, and also for his parish, which we're having to supply clergy from this parish to look after that parish, which is good. Continue to give thanks and pray for little Joseph Paul. And if you pray also and give thanks for Anna, who was received on Saturday after 20 years preparing to be received. It was very good indeed. Okay, and ooh, what are you doing? And also for Father Anthony Keswick, if you pray for him too, please, and also pray for Thecla's father as well. Okay, your prayers. God bless you. And say goodbye to everybody. Huh? I wonder what you will turn out looking like. Thank you very much indeed, Anton. God bless you.